My name is Brian Stevenson, and I'm your host. Welcome to the Cyber Chronicles how-to videos. This week we're going to talk about small business tips 202. So hopefully you watched the earlier video, some basic tips that all small companies should put in place. If you have not completed all those tasks, I would recommend that you don't go to 202. And this video is going to just offer, again, some basic tips to get started as a small business. Let's get started. Okay, so first of all, some statistics. According to Symantec, one of the largest cybersecurity companies in the world, by the end of 2017, the average user was receiving 16 malicious emails per day. When I read that, that blew my socks off. Is that still a saying? I can't remember. Since 92% of all malware is delivered via email, this is a vector that you absolutely need to control. So as we spoke in the last video, education can stop just a large variety of attempts to breach and get to your data. So phishing attacks, if you haven't heard of that before, phishing attack. What a phishing attack is an email that's sent to a user from somebody that they know typically that appears to be a valid link or file that they'll download and click on. And once they've done that, they're essentially executing a payload within their network to to hack into your system. So there's a lot of software tools that you can write on top of your email systems. A lot of people, and we'll probably talk about this on Mythbusters, assume that their email tool, since it's in the cloud, has advanced protection, and in most cases it doesn't. In most cases, the email tool that you have only looks for known threats. So if you're really concerned about this vector, or you've had ransomware hit your company, you really should consider adding a tool to your email. But education is really critical here. So if you educate your employees not to click on the links, stop clicking on the links, stop downloading files unless you absolutely know who that person is. And by knowing who that person is, if you get a file name, and I know this is kind of a pain, but try to go into the properties of the email sender to find out, is that really that person or was it spoofed? You can spoof an email pretty easily, and it looks like it appears to come from somebody else. So that's one thing that you're going to want to educate your employees on. Files, don't download files again unless you know who they are. Okay, the second tip we're going to talk about is your wireless network. So most companies, including ours, we use a wireless network, just for convenience sake. So we use a wireless network. Right now, I'm in our one of our conference rooms. And I'm not connected directly, so I'm using a wireless network. Wireless networks put you at risk to being hacked if you don't put some controls in place. So your small business has a wireless network. Any device within range of your wireless network can attempt to log into your network. So that's obviously dangerous. It's almost like somebody coming into your office and plugging into your network. So there's some defaults that you're going to want to change. So most vast majority of all routers come with defaults set up that you're going to want to change. Specifically, the first thing you're going to want to change is the name of the router. So you don't want to use a router name that's easily identified that somebody could log into. You can have fun with this too. So like my home system is FBI Surveillance Van 1. So if the neighbors try to log in, they're going to see FBI surveillance van. I'm still waiting for my neighbor to say, what in the heck, have you seen this? The next thing you want to do is change your router preset password. So most routers come with a preset password, and if you're a hacker, you know this, and you know the username. So you're going to go right into the administrative portal and attempt to log in using default passwords. So change your passwords. Try to attempt, in some cases you can change the username, the admin name, to log in. So you don't want admin and then a password. You want to be able to change that if you can within the router software. So you're going to want to change that to something that only you would know and please write it down, because if you lose this information, you're not going to be able to easily get back into your router unless you do a hard reset. Keep your router information up to date. So routers typically have updates, not on a real frequent basis, but frequently enough that when they come out with an update, you're going to want to insert it into your router. So periodically go to your router, check to see if the software is up to date, go to the admin portal, the dashboard, and click, are there updates available? If there are, update your router. So that's going to give you the latest security tools to protect your environment. Additionally, there are remote management access options on a lot of routers. So if you have that, and some routers, not a lot, but some routers enable that functionality right out of the box, go in your administrative tools, your dashboard, make sure the remote access is turned off. You don't want people to be able to log in to your router in a remote access capability and change the settings. That would not be a good thing. So let's move on to our next recommendation. Insert a payload within your environment. So that was one of our first tips. We're going to move on to number 2. Okay, our next recommendation is have a mobile device plan. Most organizations, including ours, it's like always, I can't find my freaking cell phone, have a mobile device plan. So since you use mobile devices, iPhones, Androids, and you probably connect up to your network and allows your employees to download emails. These emails are vectors that you need to control. So at a minimum, you're going to want to have all users encrypt their data on their device. It's a setting that you can set up. It's not that difficult. If you don't know how to do it, just Google, how do I encrypt data on my Android or on my iPhone. You're going to want to require passwords on all your devices. So you can actually go in the settings of an Android or an iPhone and say, hey, you don't have to log into this thing, just it's always on. You want to make sure that that setting is not enabled, and you require all users to log into your iPhone or your Android. And then the last recommendation, educate your employees, obviously back to public Wi-Fi. So you don't want to have your employees connect to every Wi-Fi that they find. It does allow you to have faster performance, faster speed, but there are nefarious characters out there. Wow, that's a big word. I haven't used that in a while. Nefarious characters out there that will attempt to steal your data. There are products out there that people buy, hackers buy. I'm not going to go through the names because people will Google it and maybe buy it, that will set up fake Wi-Fi networks, and they'll call themselves free Wi-Fi, insert airport name, free Wi-Fi, insert, restaurant name. And so people come to those restaurants, or they come to the airport, and they assume that Wi-Fi is legitimate, and it's not. All your data, every search, everything that you do is being exposed to the person that has that tool. So educate your employees to be very careful to make sure that the Wi-Fi they're connecting to is the Wi-Fi that's legitimate. And if your company requires additional security on this, there are tools again out there, as you can imagine. There are software tools that will allow you to have more robust controls over your mobile device, your mobile devices, your iPhones, your Androids, again, for your employees. They're called MDM, or mobile device managers. There's a lot of them out there. Most of them are really good. And depending on your needs will dictate which product you probably should move forward with. We'll probably have an episode just on how to determine which mobile device manager is right for you. But mobile device managers are recommended if you've got a larger organization, and it allows you to manage those tools. You can even do remote wipes, for example. So if somebody loses their iPhone, you can do a remote wipe of that iPhone, and it ensures that no one's going to be able to get to that data. So with that, we're going to move on to our next recommendation. Okay, this is a pretty obvious tip, but we put it in here anyway. Make sure you have physical controls in place for your your servers, your networks, your computers. If you utilize a server in particular, although more and more companies are moving their information to the cloud, so you need to just protect your router. Make sure it's a controlled environment against hackers. Placing your server, and this is something that I really recommend, if you're using servers and you're a small business to medium-sized business, really consider not putting your server in a closet or a small little computer room. Consider using a data center hosting company, or they call them co-location company. And all that means is your server is in a very robust data center and you're co-locating, basically renting a space next to other people. And although that may sound risky, their controls are far more robust than the average small to medium. In fact, most even enterprise companies. They're going to have, you require identification to get into the data center physically. They're going to have a man trap, so you can't just walk in and have someone sneak up behind you or sneak behind you and walk into the data center. They're going to have video in most cases, that anytime somebody walks in, everything is being videoed. Usually now with the video, it's incredible. They have high definition video and they make sure that all that video is captured for a period of time, usually 30 to 90 days. So if something happens, they can identify who that person was and what did they do. They'll have fire suppression systems that are enterprise quality. They'll have redundancy built in that most companies do not have right out of the gate. So they'll have power redundancy, they'll have cooling system redundancy. So your ability to stay up and not go down increases dramatically if you use a co-location company. So with that, we're going to move on to our next recommendation. All right, our next recommendation, although really basic, but we didn't cover this in the last recommendation. It probably should have been in our first 101. You got to make sure you got a firewall installed for your company. There's a number of firewalls available. There's also web application firewalls, or sometimes called WAFs. They sit in front of your network, in front of your servers, and they have really advanced over the years. They have considerable tools to put in place that you can take a look at for your company to really help protect your organization. They offer intrusion protection, which is kind of the basic blocking that they do. So they're going to block people from trying to get into your network. The newer firewalls offer application awareness, so they're gonna allow you to say to your users, hey, only use these applications, either whitelist or blacklist certain ones. You can decide how to do that. They're going to offer advanced persistent threat protection, which it means that known viruses are protected, but also unknown. So if somebody comes in, starts doing something kind of anomalous or they're not used to, they're going to block that person from entering into your network. They're going to have malware protection. So they're going to search for malware before it comes through and hits your servers, hits your email, hits your network. So firewalls are really a basic foundational building block. Should have probably been in 101, but that's our next tip, and let's move on. Okay, our next recommendation is to limit your digital footprint. Most companies, if you've been around a while, have what a kind of a digital footprint creep, scope creep, if you've heard that word before, which means that you start out small and over time it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. There are tools out there that allow you to search to find out which applications are being utilized by your employees. I worked for a company one time, and just to give you an example of how it can happen, we had our financial information of all of our clients located in our financial system. This did not talk to our sales department, which had information on their CRM, or customer relationship manager. Information was not the same for our service department, so they had their own database and cloud, right? So you had the finance department in different cloud replicating to the sales department in cloud, to the service department in cloud, and then to add even more fun to it, our marketing department used a whole new tool that was also replicating our client information out in a cloud environment. So now we've got 4 different places where our client information is stored and it's not talking to each other and it's not being secured. So there are applications out there that will help you consolidate that. That'll also increase your efficiency, quite frankly, and make sure your data is more accurate. So recommend that you consider that. But you also may want to consider, there's things called a CASB, or Cloud Application Service Broker, that you may want to consider taking a look at. They're kind of a newer tool that's being added to most people's toolbox. What a CASB will do is it'll control all your cloud applications. In a lot of cases, look at the risk of your cloud application, so it makes it easy for IT departments to say, no, we're not going to use that cloud app. You'd be surprised at how many of your employees are using offsite storage, for example. There are organizations or companies that are offering free storage. Why do they offer free storage? Because they want to look at your information. They're overseas, and your employees probably think, well, it's just a good deal. It's not a place that you want to store your information. Most of these CASBs will allow you to go in and search your organization to find out which applications are being used, and do a foundation, find out where you're at. We did this in our organization. We're just a small little company, and we had 48 applications being used internally in our company. So just gets to show you, larger organizations, we've seen up to 1,000 applications being utilized within their organization that the IT department had no idea about. So consider looking at a CASB at a minimum. Do an assessment of your organization to find out where you're at. And let's move on to our next tip. Okay, our next recommendation is consider purchasing cyber insurance for your organization. There are cyber insurance policies now available to protect your organization in the event of a breach or a compromise. There's a lot of nuances we're not going to get into because this is an entirely new episode that you could cover. That was an interesting sound. But we're going to talk about just the basics of cybersecurity. So cybersecurity policies, you can go on the internet, you can Google it, and again, we'll probably have a podcast going forward or coming up talking about how do you evaluate cybersecurity providers, because there's all kinds of nuances to it that you're going to want to make sure. But cybersecurity policy at its core is going to protect your organization. They're going to send you a check in the event of a breach. Highly recommended. Almost all large companies now have them. Most medium-sized companies have them. Small companies do not. The policies based on the size of your company or based on the data that you have is going to dictate how much it's going to cost. So even a small organization can afford a cybersecurity policy. So with that, we're gonna move on, and that's our last recommendation. Okay, just to really recap here, the number one recommendation that we have, our tips here, is email. So email phishing attacks is the number one area that companies are compromised. Make sure that you educate your employees really well on this vector, as well as consider buying additional tools. Number two, make sure your wireless network is controlled and you're changing passwords, you're removing remote access information. Number three, have a mobile device plan. Number four, control the physical access to your servers and your computers. Number five, make sure you have a firewall. And number six, consider purchasing cyber insurance. So with that, we'd like to thank you for watching this video, and as always, be safe and take care.